Hey, friends, I am excited to announce that we're working on some new content, things that we've wanted to do for a while, but just haven't happened yet. So, first, let me say if you don't know who I am, my name is Andi Barney, and I've been a professional technician for over 15 years now. I started in the restoration space with vintage machines, and while it wasn't intentional, it grew into a very long career dedicated to machine maintenance and service and repair and restoration. And then I realized at some point, probably around 2017, that there's this big giant gap in our industry where the number of service shops were diminishing and yet people kept sewing. So sewing machines still need to be serviced and cared for, but there were less places to take them. I think that largely happened when Hancock Fabrics closed, probably about a decade ago. And now we're seeing kind of a repeat scenario with Joann's being in bankruptcy. But honestly, before that happened, um, we knew that there was an issue before COVID. And then during COVID, it really put a spotlight on our industry and how lacking it is when it comes to service and support. So I had long before COVID realized people need to have their machine service and they're not doing it because the access to the service shop is not there. People have to drive a couple hours to get to someone. The pricing on, the amount that you're paying for machine service is much higher than it used to be. And that means that when we feel guilty about um, how much money we're spending on hobbies, that when we have to put in money to care for the tools that we're using, and the thing is that sewing machines do need service. There is no way around that. You can hear the story of someone who has had a computerized Viking Designer One machine for 30 years and never had it serviced and it's still going. That's kind of like a needle in a haystack. It does happen, but why do we keep taking that risk with our investments? Those are the reasons, though. It's gotten expensive. It's not easy to do, and you lose your machine for weeks. So we thought about how do we make this happen. Honestly, it kind of came from me needing to do this for people, and my business grew so fast when I went public with it that it became clear that as a single business owner, I can't do this by myself forever. And a lot of that was because our demand at the time came from vintage machines. There are almost no original independent old sewing machine guys left. And that's because they have all aged out of the industry. They've retired. Most of them have passed on. And they took that information with them. So the demand for our restoration and vintage machine service was huge. We had people that would drive from states over to us. We had a lady get on a plane in New Jersey with her Singer 201 as a carry-on and brought it to us to fix it because someone in her area had damaged it. We've seen everything you can think of. I closed my shop in 2022 so that I could focus on teaching my skills full time. And I still get 30 to 40 emails a week of people trying to ship their machine to us for restoration, which I can no longer do. So we do match up people in our program with people that are needing help elsewhere. So what I'm getting at is that we realize that there's this gap. And so when I was looking for ways to expand my service business, we tried doing interns and apprentices. The problem is that not everyone is cut out to do this professionally. And that's just a fact. Like I didn't know that I was going to until I was in it for a hobby and a passion, and it turned into that. So if you could sometimes spend 3 or 4 months training someone and taking all that time, and then they just end up not liking it or it doesn't work out, that becomes very expensive and very time consuming. So we had this brilliant idea to test, what if would people really be interested in learning how to take care of their vintage machines? Turns out they did. We started offering an in-person class. It was $150. They brought their machine into the class, learned how to clean it, lubricate it, nothing crazy. We weren't doing full restorations, just functional. And that class filled up every single time we offered it within an hour or two. So then we started doing that with modern machines. I tested our Remove Your Covers program quite a bit in person before we went virtual. And it turns out that people felt like this industry had really turned on them. I think that this is what we hear from a lot of the older generation of service shops, where it feels like even when you go in just for routine service, their goal is still to get you to trade in or upgrade or, go a different direction. And that's because a lot of the style of businesses now is through dealerships because we don't have those independent shops anymore. So we started offering these programs virtually, long story short. And now we were about 1,700 people in over the last 4 years since we've been virtual. So as a springboard to that, the thing is that for every person that comes into our program and learns these skills, the majority of them are now contributing to their own communities. So we have some people that are building a retirement income. We have people that are building a side business. We have a couple people that have opened up quilt shops and dealerships. And now we have people that are also searching out alternative methods, such as having a storefront inside of an existing business. We have people that are doing mobile business, and some are doing it for volunteer work. A lot of them are doing it for volunteer work. People are volunteering for thrift stores to get machines in working order so they can be sold to, for much more affordable prices to people that need them. We have people that volunteer for senior centers, library loan out programs, maker spaces, refugee centers. And then we have a large number of people that are building an income while also contributing to their communities. So this is very important to us. I'm very proud of everybody that comes into our program, whether they just learn to do it for their own machines or they carry on and do it in another capacity. So last year, I came up with this concept of sewing machine heroes. And this is our sticker that we had made for QuiltCon in 2023, when we had hoped that we would actually launch a full scale podcast. We weren't able to do that, unfortunately, mainly because I had a health issue at the beginning of the year. I avoided a stroke, which was awesome. However, that really put us behind for the year. So we spent our year kind of recovering from that incident and really pouring ourselves into building our programs and making them better and more efficient. So this year, we're not going to launch a full scale traditional podcast, but we do want some different content. And that's because so many conversations are happening within our programs and our groups that are not getting out into the sewing community just yet. One example is, again, what I've talked about. People are very frustrated about the way they have to go about getting their machine service now. We're seeing a lot of breakdown and a lot of shifts in the industry. So for those of you that are sewing enthusiasts, you know that Joann's is in the middle of their second bankruptcy in a year. They carried on $1 billion of debt. So that means the only 3 investors they have right now are all liquidators, which means they're going to end up like Big Lots. They're going to get sold off. The reason this matters is because the Viking sewing galleries were located inside of Joann's. And that is one source for Viking owners to have their machine service. And that's creating a huge disruption within the industry where they have to scramble and figure things out. So these conversations happen quite a bit within our programs, but I feel like these are opinions and things that need to be brought out into the public so we can all continue to have those conversations. Part of what I want our content to be is focusing on these people that we consider sewing machine heroes. People mistake Paul and I as considering ourselves the sewing machine heroes, but we actually consider the people that join our programs and learn to take care of machines, save them from the landfill, keep them going. Those are our sewing machine heroes, because these are the people that are carrying on the next generation of independent technicians, whether it's in a volunteer capacity or building a business or just lending a hand to your neighbor. So our tagline on our sewing machine heroes is, we're just the guide, you're the hero. So that's kind of our philosophy on things. Now we're going to kick off our content in a little bit of a different way, and I'm really excited about it. This is one thing that sort of motivated me to get this content going, is that this year I will be in VDTA, SDTA next week in Las Vegas. So for those of you that are not familiar, this is the Vacuum Dealers Trade Association and the Sewing Dealers Trade Association. So this is basically a trade association for our industry. What happens at these events? It happens once a year. I think it's been in existence now for 41 or 42 years, somewhere around there, is that everyone gathers. So all of the dealers gather, the manufacturers gather. There's a lot of training that happens in the marketing sector, people in dealer that are new dealers that are coming in. We have technicians coming in, both as independents to learn their basics, but also going to manufacturer training to get their authorization and certification done. There's a lot of things that happen, and most people don't even know that this exists. And I feel like this is an opportunity to see the other side of the industry. It's been a big mystery, and it's kind of been that way on purpose. But the new generation wants to peel back the layers and to make it more known, which is where we come in. This is the first time I've been able to teach a full program. We were at this industry event in 2023. Had to think about what year it is. In 2023, we were part of that program. Unfortunately, we came in a little late. We weren't able to offer a full-scale training program. And that was disappointing, but it was the first time we got to foot in the door to actually see what happens in a trade industry event in this industry. And we met with manufacturers. Many of them told us, we need you because we don't have a way to train technicians on the fundamentals. Unfortunately, we're limited until one of the manufacturers wants to work with us. There's nothing we can do. But it was interesting to hear that from the people on the floor. Now, this year, this is the first year that I get to teach a full scale program. I will be teaching basically a 2-day boot camp on modern machine service. So, on day one, it's a 6-hour program. We will be doing what we call Remove Your Covers Live. And this is where everybody will have a modern basic necking machine that they are going to learn how to actually remove the plastic covers completely, get into the machine, learn how to clean it, lubricate it, do common troubleshooting procedures, normal service. And then day two, we're going to go through timing fundamentals. And that means hook timing, hook needle clearance, feed dog timing, needle bar height, needle centering, parabola, everything that we do to adjust a sewing machine to make it work. So that means that anybody coming in and doing these two programs are going to leave with hands-on experience and can expand on that going forward. Now, this is a really important event to me personally because in the 40 years that this event has been happening, I'm actually the first woman that's ever been invited to teach these programs. And I don't want to be too political. It's not a DEI situation. I know that's a word we hear a lot right now, but this industry has largely been a man's world. And the thing is that I was in training doing my certification with Brother and Janome in 2020, right before the quarantine happened. And because I was supporting a dealer at that time, I was able to go to that training. And so we were in Vegas doing this program when I was in my training. And I had told my business partner at that time, I want to come back here and teach someday. Like if I were going to shoot for the stars, that's what I'd want. And even he laughed at me of like, not going to happen. Partially because, again, mostly men ran this industry, but also because for him, it just seemed really big for someone like me. And to be in a space that I never thought I could be in 5 years later is incredible to me. So that's one message I like to pass on to the people in our program is that whatever your dreams are, they're not too big. Because if you could have told me 5 years ago I would actually be here doing this, I wouldn't believe you. And the thing about our program is that we teach with our virtual academy, we do target people that already sew. And that's because people that sew have always been interested in how a sewing machine works. Why does it do this? How come it does thread nesting out of the blue? How come it was sewing fine 5 minutes ago and now it's not? And for many of those women, they largely feel like they've been dismissed. They've been treated like they're stupid. They've been talked down to, not by everybody, but there has been a large number of people that feel like this is the treatment that they got from their service shop. Nobody took the time to figure out the issues they were having with sewing machines. And the thing about sewing machines is everything has to be perfect in order for it to work. You can't just kind of throw thread and needles and bobbins and fabric at it and expect it to just work. Everything has to be perfect or it's not going to work. So when it's intimidating when you're learning, especially our newest generation of folks that are coming into this industry, they're not being taught by aunts and grandmothers and mothers anymore how to sew. They're being taught by YouTube. And YouTube has great advice, but also has very terrible advice. So when you go into your shop and you ask questions and you get dismissed, it's very discouraging. I can tell you from having had a service shop for 15 years that every time someone came in the door with what we would consider a rough attitude or some type of complaint, that they were bringing with them the baggage of all those terrible experiences they had before. And in fact, I tell this a lot in our open house event, but I have always been kind of bothered at the way the system works because before I was servicing machines, I had to take my machine and have it serviced. And when I was a brand new quilter, I actually learned to quilt and service machines at the same time. When I was a brand new quilter, I took my machine in for service because it wasn't doing very well. I couldn't make it, no matter what I did, something was wrong. And so I took it in for service. It was maybe about 9 months old. Excuse me. And when I got it back, I paid my $150 for my service for a cheap Singer machine. And the only feedback I got from the technician was a sticky note that said wrong bobbin. Didn't tell me anything about the correct bobbin, nothing else, just wrong bobbin. Didn't tell me what they did in service. And that really sat with me because I'm like, I just forked over $150, waited 6 weeks to get my machine back, and all you have is a sticky note that says wrong bobbin. So we knew that we built our shop differently to help our customer be better sewists. And then when we moved into teaching our skills, what we saw was a huge number of women coming into our program for this very reason, because they were tired of not knowing what's going on with their machine, tired of being dismissed, and honestly, tired of being told that these things were not for them. That's the kind of the attitude that our industry has perpetuated over time. And so we took that and we're very mindful of it. And the thing I love the most is that the majority of the people in our program, ironically, are not young people. We do have a huge increase of young people coming in and realizing they can take their passion and turn it into a living. But we have a number of women that are in their 70s and 80s that have never worked with tools before, have never been empowered to say, you can do this. You have the hand strength for this. We can make it, we can figure this out. You don't have to be a mechanic. You don't have to be an engineer. You can be an average person that sits at home that sews or doesn't sew. And we've proven over and over again that while we have to work through some mental exercises to build up our confidence and our belief in ourselves that we can do it, that they are doing it. I would say our audience is largely 65 plus because that is the largest pocket of people that sew, but we have a full range. But to say that the majority of our people are 65 plus and even into their 80s and late 80s has been remarkable to me. So these are our heroes. And again, this is kind of a brief introduction. You'll learn more about us as we go along, and hopefully I will not be post sick and with a terrible voice issue here. But we are very excited to move into our event next week. We are going to post a lot of live content while we're there. We have an interview set up with the Necky company, the new Necky company, which is actually owned by ABM, who also owns Innova. And this is a very unique experience for us because this is the first manufacturer that has said, we want to do things differently. Necky has given us full permission to teach everything about their machines to the average sewist. They allow us, they sold me 20 sewing machines to use in our training that we're going to be able to show how great these machines are. So we'll have an interview with them. I hope that we will have an interview with the director of VDTA because she's been very gracious in moving this industry along to get it caught up to where it's very inclusive and we can make a difference in this industry. So I do invite you to join us. We will figure some things out. There will be bumps in the road, but we do want to offer a different kind of content relating to this industry. So you'll find us, I'll put a link up on sewing-academy.com where you can always find our latest videos. We will always post them on Facebook and YouTube. And we would also like to include interviews with people in our program and other, I would say, movers and shakers in our industry. If most of you that have ever worked in our program know that we are good friends with the people at Blue Creeper, who have a product for the logging industry that works great for sewing machines. We would like to do an interview with them. So we'd like to also bring in some of our favorite gurus, such as Bob Fowler, who most of you know as the guy that takes machines apart and puts them back together. We want to be able to bring all of the sewing machine heroes into our realm and bring them to you. So thank you all for joining us on this journey. Again, you'll see more content coming from us this week. And I do invite you to contact us through our website if you have questions or if you have commentary or topic you'd like us to discuss. We absolutely will take suggestions and we'll try to get to all of them in due time. So thank you all and have a wonderful weekend.